Our own bank that sets the monetary policy is buying government debt to back the money that they currently have and placing a yield on it to people as a risk-off return. And we're not going to get into the nuance of how bad that is. But again, that just creates a perpetual system that needs more and more and more and more money to go. That's why you feel everything accelerating, and that's why inflation is not going to go anywhere.
Yo, and welcome back to another episode of the Nyc and Griff Show. Today is Monday, August 26th, coming to you with a solo thought from Griff, actually from yesterday, which would have been Sunday, August 25th. Just want to say, hope you guys enjoy Griff's thoughts here. If you're not watching, we do have video on Spotify and on YouTube. Come check us out on all the other platforms. Twitter is at Nyc and Griff Show, all spelled out. Tell me what you think about Griff's thoughts. I think they're pretty dang good. See you soon.
There's no way a government makes money without taking money from you initially, which is taxes. And then the taxes aren't enough. Has anybody heard about the national debt? I think I showed a little clock before, $35 trillion as that accelerates. But the other way that they do that is print money. So they tax you, they borrow money from you that they're also taxing you on, and they also print that money. I mean, it's the worst form of economics that you've ever seen. It's amazing that we've gotten as far as we have, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we should be so much further along in so many different areas, but I'm going to try to keep it succinct on this podcast. But please, my friends, take a look and tell me which presidential candidate is telling you that this chart is the very reason that our society is collapsing.
Hey folks, hope you're enjoying another solo thought from Griff. Wanted to jump in real quick for all of you folks that are only listening. Griff pulled up the M2 money supply chart. The M2 money supply is a representation of the total amount of dollars that are out in circulation. So it's the representation of the entirety of all the dollars out there. What the chart shows is that goes up and to the right, meaning that the M2 money supply, the total stock of existing dollars, is continuing to expand. We know that devalues the purchasing power of your dollar and so on. Back to Griff.
Families, food prices. It does not matter what you want to do in life. This is the reason that you're not able to do it. If you feel like society is not like the American dream, or that it's a lot harder than when your parents were around, just show them this chart and how much money they've printed. And then on top of that, show them how much money they're borrowing. Because at the end of the day, the Federal Reserve isn't actually a part of the government, although they just collude with them. We appoint the actual chairman of the Federal Reserve, everybody. But here's the chart you need to look at, paired with the national debt, and then they're also taxing you to do the whole thing. And you get to a point where you're like, who do we owe? Like, what's going on? I'm just trying to really highlight the point that monetary policy is the only thing that matters here. When you feel like something is harder or whatever, it's because they're printing money. And I haven't heard anybody really state, I understand there's been a little Bitcoin talk, and it's not bad. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's way off base. RFK has grifted on every crypto. He hasn't shown an understanding of that the M2 money supply chart and the national debt line are the worst economic policy in almost human history. And if you think that the middle class, or there was slavery before, it's never been worse than now. It's the worst been now from an economic standpoint. Technology is great and everything, but our economics are so off base, they're so archaic, and none of these presidential candidates, none of their advisors that they have put out there, including Elon, for that matter of fact, seem to actually want this fiat system to go anywhere, because it really, really works well for them. So 21% of U.S. debt is intergovernmental. So we owe some other countries. And if you actually take a look at some other charts, China is significantly reducing the amount of treasuries that they're buying year over year. So actually, our own public and our own people are buying most of the treasuries up at this point. What do I mean by that? Our own bank that sets the monetary policy is buying government debt to back the money that they currently have and placing a yield on it to people as a risk-off return. And we're not going to get into the nuance of how bad that is. But again, that just creates a perpetual system that needs more and more and more and more money to go. That's why you feel everything accelerating, and that's why inflation is not going to go anywhere. But you have mutual funds, pension funds, state and local governments, and then you have the foreign, you have Japan, China. So at the end of the day, which presidential candidate has some better understanding than me of that? Because I have a lot more learning to do. It's not that great. But what I'm saying is the average Bitcoiner out there, and that's the whole point of this podcast, is to just show everybody that the average Bitcoiner is like, okay, RFK, Trump, Kamala, whatever. Somebody explain that better than me and tell me why that isn't the biggest problem and the only thing that matters. Because at the end of the day, if we're borrowing money from ourselves, that means we're borrowing money from our future. And how much of our future have we borrowed? How much is a dollar really? How much is it going to actually buy in the future? If we're only borrowing dollars and that's what everything is valued in, but other foreign governments that buy a good chunk of it don't really want it anymore because it's doo-doo and they think that we could default on it or there's something wrong with it. What does that mean for our kids? What does that mean for the future? And how is that related to the M2 money pie chart? Oh, because if nobody's buying it, they're just going to print it anyway. And if they just print it anyway, oh, nobody will notice. Yeah, we will. It's called inflation. And that's why it's a runaway freight train. If they lower rates, which would be the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen, there is no way that the Federal Reserve should be lowering rates at any point in time. We have an inflation rate that is soaring. We actually haven't experienced any deflation because it's a cumulative number. So eloquently describe to me which presidential candidate is ever going to get that. And why is any young person out there supporting any of them without understanding a couple of these things first? It's beyond me. That's why I'm saying I've been doing a lot of listening over the last 6 days, and I wanted to hop on this podcast because at the end of the day, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our future, and the future are people under the age of 30, young people that should have an interest in how our government spends our future, because this is exactly what they're doing. And there's no way to get out from underneath that unless we want to go to war with everybody. And at the end of the day, what's that going to do? Oh, that's going to turn the money printer even higher, which is going to take away from more of our future. And so at the end of the day, the only thing that I can do is vote with my energy and put it all into Bitcoin. Anything else would just be a total lie to everybody else. That's why I'm recording this podcast. If somebody's telling you that there's something better you can do with your money than saving in Bitcoin today, they either have enough reading or they're outright lying to you, and they want the system that's currently going on to continue. They want to continue to stay blind. They would rather have them print money, inflate their assets, and just let the poor get poorer, the rich get richer, and the middle class get more divided. Because the easiest way to divide your middle class, if you think about it, is to just create like a lot of isms and then print the money and make life just a little harder at a time. Maybe sometimes they'll notice a lot. And then you come out and you go, I'm going to control the prices. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. People need to understand that the only thing that matters right now is we're borrowing so much money from the future that our kids are going to be, there's going to be such division that it'll be straight up feudalism in America here in about a decade. And it's accelerating because I was listening to some podcasts of ours 2 years ago from some pretty smart guys. And they were kind of saying, oh, there's not going to be any G10 countries that back their currency with Bitcoin in the next decade. It's probably going to be more like 30 years or longer. You never know. The fiat system's got a long time. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't. That would be misleading as well. For you not to be preparing right now for a collapse of some sort, whether that's assets going up through the moon and it's not a recession, or that's the middle class and your ability to put your kid in college or give them opportunity is just going to diminish and go away. And at the end of the day, you guys are all going to be eating bugs. That's kind of what we're talking about when we say that from a Bitcoiner perspective. I'm not trying to, be a whole entire red flag, but here's the thing. Food gets worse the more you print money because, again, businesses operate on margins. So they depend on an entire supply chain to get a lot of their products and to sell them. They're not selling them at a huge margin. I mean, in some cases, the worst companies in the world are the ones that do sell them at a high margin. And those are the really ugly designer bags that aren't actually cool at all, because we live in this stupid fiat era where even when you spend a ton of money on something, you still look stupid. That's the funny part. Nothing even looks good. Music doesn't even sound good. Movies suck. People are selling out all over the place. It's garbage. Nobody's putting high quality effort and high quality time into anything. It's just put out shit and let people watch it. And it's all about that rush. And here's the thing. They've got us hooked on a drug that is costing us our life. If you think about a drug addict and the amount of cocaine we've snorted as a society and all the drugs we've done to just continue to push this whole thing forward without giving it a real reset for the real economy and giving the middle class a chance to buy back into the very country they live in, the most powerful country that's ever existed, that's the United States of America, until you give them a true opportunity to buy back into that, you're just lying to them. And Bitcoin right now is the only thing young people can do to get that equity back in the countries they live in. And in this time, it's global. It's for everybody. So screw it. Bitcoin is either an American ideology or a global ideology, but America is supposed to be the world arbiters of freedom and peace and prosperity. We want to spread it. We're supposed to be like the Romans, even though all we do is go and decimate places and install somebody and make it all blow up and it all gets shitty. I mean, at the end of the day, Bitcoin actually is rights for everybody, and it's not just America. So this time, RFK, Trump, presidential candidates, DNC, whomever's actually watching, you got to catch up, baby. You got to catch up. Because Bitcoin's gonna change the world. At the end of the day, if you buy Bitcoin, you're actually getting to buy equity in the very country you live in, because those governments have to compete for that same money too. And there's only so much of it. And at the end of the day, in a future where they can't just borrow money endlessly without actually having to pay somebody back or being accountable to the public, or I don't know, not just offering a bunch of free shit and just like putting grants out there and spending even more money just to make people like you for elections and easing monetary policy up to November. That's all bullshit. And if any presidential candidate isn't telling you that, they're lying to you. So wake up. That's all there is. I'm a young guy, not doing more things than anybody else, but that's the whole point of the Nyc and Griff Show. Come on here to rip to you guys, because it's like, look at all these things happening. Who gives a shit? It's all a lie unless they're talking about the monetary policy and how we're going to pay back the future, because we need to get even with our future. We need to provide a better world for our kids. If we actually want to get anywhere, you can't just do that by giving yourself a hit of something. You go to the gym, you got to wake up in the morning, you got to lift weights, you got to walk your dog, you got to take your wife on dates, you got to do the right things in life. If you want to get somewhere in life, you got to do some of the cookie cutter shit. And at the end of the day, our government is like a bunch of drunk teenagers that got their dad's credit card and they're just spending and they're just going hard and they don't really care. And dad just keeps paying, or dad ain't paying attention, or dad's too upset with his marriage to notice. But at the end of the day, that's like what it is with our money and our future. Because who do we owe? We owe our future, and we owe some foreign entities. But the foreign entity thing is actually a good thing for us, because we're not going to pay them back. Shocker, we're not going to pay anybody back, and we're probably not even going to pay the public back. And how are we actually going to get out from underneath this? I mean, the government should buy Bitcoin. No, you should just get rid of as much legislation, as many federal employees as you can, then back it with Bitcoin, and then see what the economy does from there, and just get out of its way. That's it. And that's what every presidential candidate should be promising you. But I mean, it's a total farce to believe that either side isn't actually trying to destroy you in some way, shape, or form. And if anybody doesn't speak out against the current system in a more eloquent way than what I've heard from some very old people, we got a problem. And we need to demand more from our politicians. We need to even demand more from the Viveks of the world, who are young and still not really getting it, still too concerned with the politics. Fuck the politics. Go right down the middle. Tell the people what it is. Hey, guys, we're able to hide things because we're spending so much money within these intergovernmental agencies and the CIA and the FBI, and we're printing money and we're doing treasuries. Nobody knows how much money there is. They change the metrics all the time. Tell the public that's the problem. Tell the public that the president is not the most powerful person within the government ever. Tell them that you're trying to move us slowly towards the same thing. If you're supporting the fiat system, it does not matter who's talking about it. And I think it's fair to say that. I mean, like, RFK showed the ability to grift. Trump's putting out crypto projects. Kamala's a nightmare situation. And some would say, oh, what's your situation? Like, you're just so pessimistic, not optimistic. No, I'm optimistic. I vote with my economic energy. I put it in Bitcoin. I don't believe in what any of these people are saying to us. I want things to get better in this country. The only way we're going to do it is by disincentivizing bad business practice, by disincentivizing bad behavior from a market standpoint, which is allowing Bitcoin to do its thing. And if your parents or grandparents or the older generation or the presidential candidates or anybody like that is telling you otherwise, it is a lie. I don't care what anybody says. Nothing else really matters. You got to fix that. If you fix that, expose that, and everything else will take care of itself. It is an antidote to society. That's why Bitcoin could be so great. But at the end of the day, people have to actually want it too. People can't just let the big players buy it, manipulate it, and make it and put it into a box forever. And a lot of Bitcoiners would be happy with that. I'm sure myself would be happy with that. Put it in the box. Just make it a treasury asset. Just let it be this benign piece of thing that just makes everybody a fuckload more fiat. nobody really, I mean, like, no Bitcoiner should really want that, but that's what the pathway we're kind of headed down is. I mean, even sailors like, oh, there's gonna be $45 million of Bitcoin. Why is that good? I don't actually see that making society better. I see that making money easier to borrow, because Bitcoin is like, yeah, it's going to take out some, but at the end of the day, that means people are just going to hit it. I mean, like, if Bitcoin really hits, MicroStrategy could fuck up for years and years and years and years and years and years, borrow from the future forever, collude and do all kinds of stuff. The power structure isn't automatically fixed with Bitcoin. It actually starts with the people waking up, voting, and having legislation in the tangible real world as well. I mean, like, it matters. The Constitution matters as well as Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin plus the Constitution, not Bitcoin or just the Constitution. Both matter. America's a great country. It should be where everybody wants to live. It should be a much more robust economy. But at the end of the day, people are going to be suckered up to RFK endorsing Trump and talking about seed oils. They're going to be happy if it becomes a Treasury Reserve asset, because that just means a lot of Bitcoiners are going to be rich. I mean, $45 million Bitcoin, shit, great. I like golfing. My wife just picked it up. The shit's great. Have a good time. Maybe go rafting. I see a lot of people rafting. Everybody does the rafting. I sunburn easy, so maybe I don't want to raft. But all I'm saying is, wake up a little bit. We owe it to ourselves. That's the thing, people. 80% of the debt is held by us. The more borrowing we do, whether Bitcoin is there or not, we're borrowing it from the future. And Bitcoin may make that better no matter what capacity it is. That's the optimistic take. No matter what capacity the government adopts Bitcoin in, and or large players within the society, whether they be corporations or individuals, no matter the role Bitcoin takes up, whether that's 2%, 5%, 8%, 50%, total the entire economy in a true Bitcoin standard, it doesn't matter what area it takes up. The optimistic take is that that will be enough to help and fix society for now. And I truly hope that 2% of the economy taken up by Bitcoin is enough antidote for what's going on. But I have to say, I'm not too sure. And RFK, Trump, is anybody going to be bold enough and take the action necessary to stop the government spending, to stop the national debt, to provide transparency to the monetary policy, to abolish so much legislation and kick out so many people from the federal government? And hey, there's a marketplace for you. Guess what? We're going to be America first. We are going to put those tariffs on things. Oh, that's going to drive prices up. No, there's 12 million federal employees. Tell them to go start a business, provide an economy for them to go do something. Have some people farm some stuff. We are so behind. We are in so much trouble in so many areas because we lack the middle class and small business. We are so weak from that standpoint. We depend on everybody else and the hegemony of the dollar. It's terrible. So young people need to realize, no matter what percentage Bitcoin takes up, that is, in my opinion, as if it comes from a plebe standpoint, you vote with your economic energy. You see the amount of Bitcoin that is bought by the public, Americans, not ETFs. You should buy Bitcoin and save it. You're going to be able to change the world, because if Bitcoin becomes 2, 3, 4% of the economy, us as Bitcoiners will have the ability, the ones that actually borrow Bitcoin and custody it, will have the ability to affect change in society that is so great that we will eventually get it to a 50 to 75%. That's the whole optimistic take with Bitcoin. It just has to keep moving forward. And it is accelerating at a really, really fast rate, but they printed a lot of money, baby. I mean, like, I don't know what else to say. And the public needs to understand, the only thing that matters is how much money they print and how inefficient that makes everything. So I guess a lot of things, because it is a lot of things. They've messed it all up. None of it's very good. You realize how much better society could be? You realize how much more you could do with your money if it was actually worth something? Do you realize how nice it would be to live in a country that's supposed to be the greatest superpower in the world with a hard money instead of a weak, shitty money? We get to be the greatest empire the world has ever seen with hard money. That would actually change something. So hopefully RFK and Trump don't just talk about all the things that don't matter. It's transparency behind the monetary policy that is actually going to change something. And no matter how big the events are, the DNC or whatever that's happened in the last couple of weeks, that's what the people need to understand, is that it's all about the monetary policy. And I guess that's what's going to be the theme of my podcast every time I get on here by myself, is I'm just going to be like, hey, you see those guys not talk about the monetary policy? Great. Who cares what they talked about? It's a game. WWE. There goes my heroes. Watch them as they print more money. That's all they do. They just print more money. They borrow it from our future, and that's who we owe. I mean, people could make it a lot more complicated than that and a whole bunch of things, but those are the same people that are probably telling you to do the whole 401k thing. And I'm telling you, a 401k is a vote for the system. A vote for Bitcoin is buying and self-custodying it. There's two options now. There's a market for it. And the people that are buying into anything that's going on from either side, opinion, just leading the young ones, including myself, down a bad path. And guess what? We're not even run for offices in a lot of respects. We haven't accumulated any wealth, so to speak, in this world. None. I mean, we're pipsqueaks on a scale that we're probably not even ever going to get to play in. Maybe a couple of us will get to play in it. But if Bitcoin works out the way that a lot of people hope and think at this point, because the debt train is just so out of control, and these guys apparently don't even realize what they're doing, or they do realize what they're doing. Scary thought. Bitcoin will matter. That means a lot of Bitcoiners matter. So I hope a lot of young people watch that RFK and Trump deal and said, you know what? If they're really about freedom, they're going to let Bitcoin go crazy here. Bitcoin going crazy means no capital gains tax, no transaction costs, get rid of taxes in general, all taxes in general, stop funding any federal government, bring a flat tax to society to pay for whatever we have to pay for to unwind the whole situation. But that's the very thing we need to do. Has to unwind, has to get small. You have to build a robust circular economy in America. It is what every great superpower has always failed to do. And that might be because some people like just extracting wealth out of nations. We might actually just be some sort of capitalistic communism. I don't even know what you want to call it, but there's pariah here, and they're extracting the wealth of our country, and the people need to buy it back. And any presidential candidate that would actually stand up there and say it a hell of a lot better than I just did the last 35 minutes, I want to vote for that guy.